Hello and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Christo Ponjarov. I'm manager of WordPress initiatives here at SiteGround, and I have the pleasure of having Daniel Kancha here with me today.
Hello guys.
He's head of our DevOps team, and today mostly Daniel will be talking about how caching can make your website 5 times faster. Without further ado, I think that most of you are aware that recently we have made some huge changes in our SuperCacher system in the dynamic caching. We made it available for everyone on SiteGround, including the startup accounts. And this has been a massive project in our DevOps team for how long?
Well, yeah, pretty much for the last year. We've been working on that massive change in the dynamic caching for about a year, and it was a lot of testing, lots of development, and that's the focus. That's the thing that we want to tell you more about today. So without any more hesitation, I'll now look here, because that's my laptop, and play a presentation. There we go. Sharing my entire screen, and right now you should be able to see that.
Yep, you're good.
Awesome guys, so let's get started. We'll be talking about the dynamic caching. As we've said, I'm Daniel. I'm a lead at the DevOps team, and one of the projects that I've been leading is exactly the caching and how it could be improved and what we did there. Christo said that he's leading our WordPress project. So today's agenda, before we jump to the technical stuff and to the explanations of how the newest version of our caching works, I would like to say a few words about what to expect. So first of all, Christo will talk about why website speed matters and how you can make sure that your website is fast enough and why that's so important. Then I'll briefly talk about what caching is and how it can help you. Then we'll go into details about the SiteGround SuperCacher and what features it offers. After that, I'll do a short demo of what it means for a website to be cached, how faster it is compared to a website which is not cached. So that will be the most interesting part. And finally, I will share some details, tips, and another information about how you can fine-tune the dynamic cache. So let's get started. Why website speed matters? Christo, your turn.
That's been a question for quite some time. Speed has become a important, very, very hot topic the past years in the web community as a whole, in the WordPress world too. The first thing you should consider when putting some work on your website speed is that by making your website faster, you're building a better user experience. Ignore everything else. Your visitors will highly appreciate the speed of your website, fast loading pages, and they will be happier interacting with your website. So faster page loading times really affect and improve the user experience of your visitors. The next thing is if you're selling something, page speed is directly connected to your conversion ratios. 1 second of delay in your product pages can directly lead to a loss in sales of around 7%, if not more. There are a lot of studies out there on the internet. You can check them out. I think one of the biggest one was done by Amazon, which have intentionally slowed down a number of test pages on their websites and prove that it's really something that dramatically affects your conversion rates. So if you're selling something, it's even twice more important for you to pay attention on your page speed. Another big part of that is that so far speed was affecting your click-through ratio, your dropout ratios, and which was indirectly affecting the rankings of your website. But now, since May this year, Google will start taking into consideration the so-called core vitals directly into their ranking mechanism. This means that slower website will rank worse than a fast one. So improving your site speed will directly affect your search engine optimization and the way you rank on Google. And last but not least, if a website is properly cached, properly optimized, it will require much less resources. It will consume much less resources, and this will significantly lower your hosting costs. Because if your website makes, let's say, slow queries to your database, your scripts take a lot of time to be processed, all that requires CPU from your hosting environment. And one way or another, you'll be paying for that. I mean, you will probably at some point, if you get more visitors, you will have to upgrade to a more powerful solution. While if your website is leaner, well optimized, you'll be able to service much more traffic on much cheaper hosting solution. And on to the next slide. Here are the very, very basic metrics when we talk about speed. This is not the only metric, but it's the easier to comprehend and most widely used. It's the time to first byte. This is the time it takes for the server to compile all the things beneath your website, the database data, your PHP scripts, etc., and start sending an HTML output to your browser. So Google's definition of a fast website is the one that has time to first byte under 200 milliseconds. Medium is something between 200 and 1 second, and everything above 1 second will be considered slow. So this is the basic guideline that you should follow when you consider your pages and whether they're fast or need more work. So if you're getting time to first byte under 200 milliseconds, in most of the time, you're good to go, and you can focus on different areas of your website. But if you're above that, you should definitely pay attention to your website and put some work in it. And Daniel will tell you more about different ways that you can improve those and what we have done in order to make your life easier and improve it for you.
Yeah, so as Christo mentioned, the speed recommendations that you see on that website, on that slide, they will be more and more important because Google will start using them more aggressively into ranking algorithms. And it's not just Google, like everyone is checking the speed of your website more and more often, especially on mobile. So let's get started. What is caching and how it can make your website faster? So caching is something that I would like to define by quoting Albert Einstein. So the definition of insanity, Einstein says, is doing the same thing over and over again but expecting different results. It's pretty much the same with your website. If you're serving a web page, it doesn't matter if it's WordPress or another application to your users, and that page is relatively the same every time and it changes only from time to time. There is absolutely no point of wasting time generating that HTML over and over again and delivering it to your users. So that takes time. Computational power costs money, and you don't need to dynamically generate the content that your users are viewing. So caching is that. Caching saves you that time in order to be able to deliver faster the HTML pages and to bring up the capacity of your hosting solution. So it's not only fast, but what it also gives you when you have a traffic spike, your website, for example, is listed somewhere on a popular website, then you will be able to handle more requests coming to your website. So you also save on money because hosting from one point, it gets more expensive when you have more traffic. So how is a request for a site handled? Typically speaking, I would give you two examples. The first one is for a static file. Let's say you have your user and that user is loading a page. On that page you have an image and that image needs to be loaded for the browser. So the user makes a request, that request reaches the server, and then the web server needs to find the image somewhere on the hard drive of the server. It finds it and it delivers it back to the user. So that's how a typical static resource is handled. When I say static resource, it's not just images. So those are also CSS files that you may use to style your website, or JavaScript files. Those are static resources. And reading them and displaying them to your users is just a matter of finding those files on the hard drive and delivering it back to the users. It's a little bit more complicated when we're talking about dynamically generated pages. So when I say a dynamically generated page, think of any WordPress page or a web page which is generated by another application like Joomla, Drupal, Magento, for example. So what happens is that the user requests your website, be it the homepage or a contact us page or whatever. The server then needs to start up a PHP file, which then connects to your database, and that PHP gets the data from the database, makes some changes to it, for example, or decides how to format the data. Then that HTML page, which is finally generated, is returned to the web server, and the web server returns that HTML page to your browser. And that takes a lot of time. Like, compared to the static resources, that could be 10 times slower than just reading a file from the disk of the server. And that is affected by many, many ways. Like, let's say you're having a WordPress website with lots of plugins and you have some custom code in there. The PHP could take seconds to load data from the database. And if you have like a really big database and you have slow queries generated by the plugins, then the website will be slower compared to getting that page from a cache. So there are many different layers of caching. Like what I said about caching could be applied at different points in time. So how to improve the loading speed of a page? Like, you could focus, and that's what usually happens. That's how users approach that problem usually. So for example, they focus first on the PHP. I need to have, let's say, the fastest PHP and implement PHP caching, and that's important for sure. That's great. Like, if you are able to have a good PHP setup, like for example, I would mention here one of the latest additions to our setup, the ultra fast PHP that we offer on some plans. That's great, because if that PHP script is loading for half a second on one solution and for 2 seconds on another solution, then you would prefer the fast PHP. So caching inside PHP is one way to improve how the website loads and how fast it is. On the database end, you could use another layer of caching, which could be memcached, that we offer as part of our caching solutions. And you can cache results from database queries in memcached. So that way you will lower down the time that is needed for the whole page to be generated. But still, even introducing all of those changes here, you're making little improvements at different steps. And what we wanted to solve as a problem was how we can actually eliminate all of those steps and focus on caching the whole page without any PHP executions, without any connections to the database, without introducing all those additional steps. So that is what we call the dynamic caching. So we cache the whole process, the PHP execution, what we get from the database, how the PHP manipulates that, and once we have the generated HTML page, we cache it into the server, and then when another user requests the same page, we directly deliver that same page. So that is the SuperCacher. That is one of the things that is part of the SuperCacher. So our SuperCacher is the technology that we've developed for the last almost 10 years, and the dynamic caching that I mentioned is part of it. The SuperCacher was first released in 2012, December. So it has been around for quite some time now. It has layers of caching, and dynamic caching is the part of the SuperCacher which gives the best results. The rest, they're still important, you still have to use them, but that makes the biggest impact for your users. So it has been around for 10 years, but why making the dynamic caching working for everyone by default right now? Well, there are a couple of reasons there. And the most important one is that 10 years ago, most of the CMSs, they, let's say, didn't comply with all of the caching standards out there, and that was not really evolved at the time. So HTTP caching and understanding what to cache and what not to cache was not something that that all the CMSs were doing. So at the time when we released our first version, it was only available for WordPress, Joomla, and after that we added support for Drupal and Magento. So at the time you had to install a plugin part of your application in order to be able to have dynamic caching at all. So it was not possible to have that type of caching without a plugin installed for the application. Right now, for the last year, as I've said, when we were actively testing and developing that solution, we believe that 99% of the applications right there, and especially the most popular ones, they are honoring those standards, and they work pretty much out of the box when they're using HTTP caching headers. So the time has come for us to release it publicly for all of the hosting plans. And the SuperCacher right now has 3 main sections as of today. So it has fast delivery of static resources by default. So if I go back to that example where I was talking about static resources, we do have a way to quickly find those resources on the hard drive of the servers, and after that, when they're requested again, to deliver them as fast as possible without actually getting the delay that you will get if you're accessing an image or CSS file for the first time. So it's like caching for static resources only. Then we have memcached for database queries, but memcached requires a plugin. So if you need to use memcached, and I strongly advise you to do so, then you need a plugin to tell the application, like, I need that middle layer of caching there to cache those heavy queries. For WordPress, that's our own SuperCacher optimizer plugin. And for other applications, I know Joomla has one, Drupal has another one, and also Magento, PrestaShop. Right now, they all have an extension that allows you to use memcached. So what's interesting, what's the essence of the release, the latest release that we did, is that right now dynamic caching of pages works by default for all of the servers hosted, for all of the sites hosted on all of our servers. There is no need to enable that. It's enabled by default. It works by default. It doesn't matter what's the application. Well, of course, if you want to fine-tune that caching and have more control over it, you can install our plugin for WordPress or control the caching through headers. And I will show you how to do that in a while when I get to the demo. So how fast is actually the caching? Like, what's the difference there that I'm talking about? So it's time for the demo, and let me just switch to my other browser. Okay. Right here, you should be able to see a WordPress website. That's my own website, and right now I'm going to show you how I'll install the plugin that I was talking about, our own plugin that allows you to control the caching and what it does. Here it is. You just click install. It's installed. Right now we're going to activate it. Nice and easy. Just need to find it here. As you can see, I have more plugins, and that's because I wanted to show you how a website with lots of plugins performs, and deliberately some of them are outdated. So as you can see, the SuperCacher right here has its own settings, and right now the dynamic caching is turned on. So when you have the plugin, you can control if the caching for that specific application is enabled or disabled. You can also purge the cache manually if you want. And what the plugin also does for you is when you make changes to your website, the plugin connects to our caching servers and tells them to purge the cache. Like, for example, you edit a page, automatically that page will be removed from the cache, so people will see the changes immediately. So right now, I'm logged into WordPress. As you can see, I installed the plugin in order to be able to control the caching in more details. It gives you many other options, like you can remove certain URLs from the cache if you want, if they're problematic for some reason. You can also exclude certain post types for WordPress. Let's see what's the difference when something is cached and something is not. So that's Chrome. That's a page on my website. And I want to show you how fast is that page when it is cached and when it's not cached. So I'm going to reload. And as you can see right now, that page loaded for 1.25 seconds. That green bar that you see right here, 1.25 seconds. If we go to headers.
And by the way, that's a fast time for a WordPress website without caching.
Yeah, so what we see sometimes is when you have too many plugins or have a team, it could be like 2 seconds. And my website is really simple. That's just a blog post, some text, and an image on it.
Yeah, it's not that. Yeah. It's not a WooCommerce with 20 WooCommerce plugins on top of Elementor with 20 Elementor plugins. So 1.25
seconds. Generally speaking, it's not that bad. But according to what we mentioned when we were talking about time to first byte and the recommendations from Google, that's a slow website. So I will now reload the page, but first I wanted to show you that there is a header here which is called xProxyCache, and it indicates if that page was loaded from the cache or not. So right now it's a miss, which means that the page was dynamically generated, it was not cached. So right now we're just going to reload, and there you go, 280 milliseconds right now, which is like how much? 5-6 times faster.
Again.
Yeah, we can also hit that cache again, and you will see that the more you access the page, as you can see here, it's loaded for, what's that timing? 70 milliseconds. Like, that's crazy. That's like 15 times faster than not loading from the cache. So it's a huge amount of savings. Like, imagine that's not only 15 times faster for the web page, that means that for a minute you can handle 15 times more requests coming to your website. So if your website gets featured on Reddit or another website like that, you would be able to handle the traffic with caching. Without caching, like, that website will probably reach the limits of the hosting solution like for couple of minutes or something. It will be,
caching really helps in peaks in traffic too.
Exactly. So
you can show them the header, the hit header.
Oh yeah. That's exactly what I was going to do. So as you can see here, xProxyCache hit, which means that the page was loaded from the caching. And as I explained, the WordPress plugin that we have, it will automatically clear the cache if we edit that page. So it will be a miss next time if I edit the page. So what else? First of all, do you want me to show something specific from the plugin? Because I know that you are heavily involved in the development of that plugin.
Yeah, I just want to point out that the full page caching, which is the dynamic caches, at the end of the day, it saves the entire page and serves it from the cache next time you load it. It's great, but it's not suitable for absolutely every different page type. So that's why we have added to the plugin a number of ways to exclude certain pages. I will give you a few examples, like your checkout page should never be cached. It's not a page that you're going to rank with Google. It's not a page that is very crucial to be your fastest page. What you have to be sure is that it's completely dynamic and that you don't save content from the previous visitor.
Yeah.
We have done a lot of work, both Daniel's team and on the plugin side, to exclude all those page types, different URLs that we know that shouldn't be there. But if you have something custom in WordPress, like a membership plugin with a super custom login mechanism that doesn't follow the regular WordPress stuff, you can use the exclude functionality we have added to the plugin, which is supports different post types if you don't know the URL of each one of those pages that will ever need to be dynamic. So you can exclude the entire post type. Like, for example, I'm just giving an example, you don't need to do this, but you can select the product post type and then all of your WooCommerce products will be out of the cache. Or you can use the URL, and it supports wildcard too, so you can exclude everything that is /members /*, and from then on all the URLs that is supposed to be some super members only content will not be cached. So bear in mind, Cache is great, but when you configure it, just pay a bit more attention on your website and make sure that you, in case you need anything out of the cache, it's there. You just need to configure it properly.
Yeah.
That's. I don't want to go into details. We had another webinar about the HG Optimizer. You can take a look at it if you have the time. And in there we go in depth about the front-end optimizations, image optimizations, and so on.
Yeah, so think of the plugin for WordPress that we developed as an additional layer which gives you that fine control of things. And it also, the biggest how to say it, advantage of the plugin for WordPress is that it automatically clears the cache for you when you make changes to your website. If you have a WordPress website and you don't have our plugin, then the website will be cached. It will be fast again. The cache will work by default for your website, but you will not have that fine control of how the cache works. You will not be able to say, for example, I want to exclude that specific URL there. So our advice is, if you're using a WordPress website, install the plugin. It's free, it gives you additional features, and you will be able to manipulate the cache from within your WordPress administrative area. So for all other clients that we have that are not using WordPress, caching is working out of the box. And for some applications, like for most of them, we don't have an additional plugin. Caching will be working by default, your web pages will be fast, and we've done a lot of work to make sure that things that should not be cached will not end up in the cache. For example, anytime we see something with matches checkout or similar URLs, we will not cache that because we don't want such conflicts when we're talking about e-commerce websites and stuff like that. So what else? I would like to show you right now how you can control caching when you don't have WordPress and you cannot install our plugin. When you are developing something, you're playing with PHP code, how you can tell our caching servers what to cache and what not to cache purely by editing your htaccess files or directly using PHP code to do that. You can do that. And our caching servers, they're not using hard-coded configuration. They're honoring the caching settings that the website tells them about. So right now on that website, that's Site Tools. That's our control panel where you can also control caching from. You can flush the cache. Right here, for example, I can flush the cache for my domain name. There we go. We flushed it from Site Tools. I can show you how it will be a miss because 1.22 seconds because I flushed it. So from Site Tools you can also control caching, like direct delivery of the static resources, dynamic caching, and memcached as well. So in Site Tools I will show you how through htaccess you can manipulate the caching, and here's how to do that. You can set headers, HTTP headers, to do that. Right here I have 3 lines that control caching in a different way, and right now they are commented out, but I will make them active and you will see how they affect the caching. So the first one that I would like to show you is called cache control. So the header is called cache control. I'm going to zoom in here so you can see in better what's going on. So this header that we are setting through htaccess is called cache control, and the value of cache control here is the following. So what we're basically instructing the caching layer of SiteGround is do not store, do not store those pages in the cache, and max h0 means that they should not be cached at all. And that's valid not only for our caching solutions, but it will also be passed on to other caching layers along the way. So for example, if you're using a CDN like Cloudflare or Sucuri in front of us and you don't want them to also cache those pages, you can set those headers. So I'm gonna save that page right now, but first, need to zoom out a little bit, saving the htaccess. There we go, we saved it. And right now, if I go back to that page over here and I reload, right now it's handled from the cache because the cache was not flushed. So I will just do that. So the headers in the htaccess.
Yeah, if you make changes to the cache control via htaccess,
you
remember
need
to first the cache from CyTOS.
Because the plugin is not like detecting those changes in the htaccess. But right now, here's it. We reload the page. Again, it loaded for over 1 second. And if I scroll down, you will see here xproxy cache miss. So setting that header in the htaccess pretty much told the caching servers do not cache any of the pages that are part of that domain name right now. And there is an additional header right here, which tells us why the page was not cached. So it tells us that it was not cached because there is a header which tells the caching server to not store any of those pages in the cache. Here it is. So that's how you can, for example, control caching for a folder in which you have, let's say, a development website. Let's say you're working on a new project. You don't want caching to be enabled there, and what you can do is just set that in htaccess, and anything in that folder will not be cached at all. So that's one way to control caching through headers. Now let's go back to the htaccess. I'm just going to comment this out, and I will show you how another value of cache control works. So here's how cache control works if we want to tell the caching layer to cache something for specific periods of time. Like in that case, I will just instruct the caching layer to cache everything for 10 seconds. So max h10 tells the caching servers to cache everything for 10 seconds. We're saving that. Let's again clear the cache for those rules to take effect. Right now, we're going to clear that, reload the page. It's going to be a miss the first time. As you can see, it's miss. Right now, if I reload it, it's going to be hit. And right now, if we wait 10 seconds, you're going to see what happens. Like after 10 seconds, the caching server will automatically remove that from the cache, and that specific header right here will say expired. So we'll see that something is expired in the cache and it needs to be reloaded from the backend servers. So let's see. Reload. Again, over 1 second, and you see expired in those headers. So what I did is practically I told the caching server, cache all pages for 10 seconds, and once 10 seconds are over, then you have to refresh that content again from the backend servers. And that's great for websites that, let's say you don't have a plugin for your custom PHP application that will proactively connect to the caching servers and purge and remove the cache. But if you still want to take advantage of caching, it's better to have caching with low TTL, like objects will be kept in the caching for a short period of time, but still it's great to cache them, because when you have many requests towards your website, you will be handling a big percentage of them from the cache. One last thing that I want to show you right now is how you can do that with some PHP code. So right here, there is a simple PHP file that outputs the date on the server, pretty much just the date. And by default, that will be cached. Let's see. It says it's Wednesday, the 17th of March, and as you can see, it's a miss right now. If I reload that, it's a hit. There you go. So,
and now if you keep reloading, the time will not change.
Yeah, right now if you keep reloading, the time will not change. But if you go into the PHP code and add the header here, like that specific PHP script, the page which the PHP script generates will have this header which says do not cache that. So if you're a PHP developer, you're working with your PHP code, you can also control caching in that way. Let me save that. Of course, right now I need to flush that cache because the page has already been cached. And if I go back here, I reload, it should be a miss. And as you can see, again, we can see the header that says do not store that page into the cache. So the bottom line here is that if you're not using WordPress, if you want to play around with the cache, you can do that. And our caching servers will definitely honor what you're telling them to cache and when to cache that. So let's go back to the presentation. I hope that you saw how much faster websites become when dynamic caching is used. In order to sum up things here, I've prepared a slide for you so you can check that later. And controlling caching through HTTP headers is actually pretty easy. You just set the header, you set for how long you want that to be cached, or if you don't want it at all to be cached, then the caching headers will definitely honor what you're doing there. We briefly talked that when you're using WooCommerce, for example, or another e-commerce solution, we have that covered right now, and your checkout pages will not be cached, like the information that your users are seeing will not be cached. And that actually works because 99.9% of all the plugins for WooCommerce, of other applications such as PrestaShop and Magento, they set cookies. And right now the caching servers are configured that when they see their cookies configured by the application, we don't cache those pages that have the cookies there. So that's another thing to consider when you're developing something and you want users to see specific information. When you use setCookie as header and you set cookies for your users, you will be sure that that will not end up in the cache. Expires is another header which does the same as cache control. I just added it here because some people are familiar with it and it could be easier for them to use. So that's how you use HTTP headers to control the caching. How to set the headers? You can use the header set directive in htaccess, as I've shown, and also use that directly in PHP code. So generally speaking, my advice is if you want to disable caching for a whole website, for a whole folder, use the htaccess. Just go in there, drop a line, and everything in that folder will use that header that you're setting there. If you want to set specific caching time or something else for a specific part of your website, and you know which is the PHP code that controls that, you can use the headers directly in the PHP code. Both will work. So what to exclude from caching and what we've done to make sure that the wrong things do not end up in the cache and we only cache things that needs to be cached. Well, checkout pages for sure, as we mentioned. User-specific pages, if you're having a social platform, none of those should be in the cache. In order to speed those up, you need to use memcache, you need to use a fast PHP setup, but caching will probably only cause issues there. So administrative areas for applications, for example, the WP admin site of WordPress, administrator site of Joomla, they will not be in the cache by default. So we do have those configured on the servers. So all of those administrative areas that are for the popular applications out there, they will not be cached for sure. And if you're setting set cookie for those admin parts, for sure they will not be cached. So pretty much any information which should not be visible by all of your users should not end up in that cache. And to recap and give you a few takeaways. Always use caching when possible. So if you have to remember one thing from our webinar, that's the top thing that you should remember. Like, if you can use caching by default for everything. That's why we decided to make that step and to enable it for everyone. Like, we see an increase of all the requests going through the cache on our servers, and that's really nice because we know that more than 5 times speed up for those websites means like lots of traffic for the clients, means happy users that are accessing those websites. Strive for 200 millisecond load times, and that's going to be one day the new standard. Like, it's going to be sooner rather than later. Like, most websites right now, they're around a second, sometimes over it, sometimes below a second, but that will be the new standard, and you will see that websites that are not so fast, they will end up like penalized in terms of search rankings for sure. So SuperCacher plugin for WordPress. Like, if you're using WordPress on our platform, install the plugin and use it. It will save you time. You'll be able to control the caching from within your WordPress. And most importantly, it will definitely clear the caching when you make changes to the website. Fine-tuning using HTTP headers. Well, that's something you need to research if you're not using WordPress and our plugin. So if you're using a custom application, you can use the headers that I mentioned and control the caching for your application through those headers. And last but not least, for the parts of your website that cannot be cached, or let's say that your whole website cannot be cached for some reason, use memcached for caching your database queries, and also use our ultra-fast PHP, which is like 5 times, 10 times faster in some cases compared to other PHP setups out there. And I think that's it, and we can move on to the questions.
Nice. We have tons of questions, so thank you everyone for the great questions and for watching the presentation. Now starting with the first and most highly voted question. It's by Michael. Edge Optimizer, how does it compare with all the plugins that have caching features like Jetpack, etc. and others? I have seen in the chat another plugins mentioned. The thing is that Edge Optimizer will always outperform every other plugin. Now, my team, we have made a large amount of tests on different WordPress cases, and there is no single plugin out there that can compare to the Edge Optimizer. That's because they are all file-based caching plugins which store the data in their file. And again, when a visitor makes a request, that request goes to the web server. That web server reads a file from the disk, then it serves to the visitor. While with the SG Optimizer, with the Nginx reverse proxy, that request is served right away from the cache. You don't even reach the web server. That's the reason why Daniel had to clear the cache from SiteTools when he made changes to the htaccess, because the content was served like that directly from the Nginx. So the only case in which something else is working faster is the case in which the SG Optimizer cache is not working. So always test that your website is being cached. Now the reasons are usually that something is setting a cookie on every page hit, which is generally bad coding unless you totally need to do that. You can see that in the headers. If there is a set cookie header, you should see which plugin does it and check its configuration. Maybe it's something that you don't actually need on your website. Maybe it's something that is misconfigured or something like that. The next thing you should check is whether you have some rules in the htaccess that mess with caching, or in your wp-config PHP file, disabling caching. And since we started 2 different plugins, do not overlap functionality, do not use multiple plugins that do the same thing. Now, if you install SG Optimizer and then install Swift and then install WP-Rocket, this will not make your website 3 times faster. 99% of the cases it will break down functionality and will cause conflicts. So do not install multiple plugins that do the same thing. That would be my general advice. In Edge Optimizer, you're going to find image optimization, cache optimization. Just carefully go through all the tabs and figure it out, and test your website. I've seen some people in the chat saying my loading speed, my time to first byte is 2 seconds, 3 seconds. If you're getting those numbers, that content is not cached.
Yeah.
There is no way you can get a time to first byte above half a second on SiteGround servers. It's not happening.
Yeah.
If you're getting 1.2, if you're getting 2 seconds, something is blocking the cache from working.
Yeah, and that's pretty clear. It's pretty clear from the headers that could tell you what's the thing that is not allowing the caching servers to cache something. Like, as I've shown you, you can see the headers. If you see a miss there, there is another header which tells you why there was a miss, like why there is a miss there. Usually it's another plugin saying do not store any of those pages in the cache, or something else. For example, as Crystal said, set cookie header. Keep in mind though that when you're logged into WordPress and you're checking the headers, you always see misses because
check
you
your
have
browser.
the cookie.
Yeah, you need to check the headers in a separate browser, preferably, so you can and refresh, so you're not logged in. Because when you're logged in, automatically stop serving cache content.
Actually, when you're logged in, the value that you will see there is bypass. So you will see bypass.
It will not be a miss, it's going to be bypass.
It's going to be bypass because you are logged in into the admin area of WordPress, and we know that you have a session and then you bypass the cache.
We had a question in chat, which Daniel touched upon, but what if a lady asked, what if we use Laravel? Does it support Laravel as a PHP framework? But I think with headers, what you explained.
Yeah, so Laravel, just like Symfony, just like other PHP frameworks, it allows you to control the caches. Like, it has part of the framework which allows you to set headers, and you as a developer need to figure out which are the pages of your website that you are making with Laravel need to be cached, for how long, and which ones to exclude. By default, we will cache the website that you're making with Laravel. If you are having parts of your website that need to be for locked users only, and you're using cookies for that, those parts of the website will not be cached.
So yeah, by honoring the default caching guidelines, that pretty much most apps would gonna work out of the box. We had a question from Carol about, for Joomla website, is there a way to force SiteGround cache without having to log into the site tools? I have answered that with a link. In it you can find our JCache plugin, which is similar to the SG Optimizer for WordPress, and it basically connects Joomla with the caching system, so it automatically will purge the cache when you update your content. And the next question is the caching system is from Lydia, whether the caching system and the improvements are available for everyone, or people need to do anything extra.
Well, they are available right now, and they are enabled, and they're working by default for all of the sites on all of our servers. So yeah, you got them already.
You don't need to do anything extra. You need to do anything extra if you want to disable the cache.
Yeah.
Another question is how to best use SiteGround with Cloudflare, and there are a number of those questions. I'm going to mark all those as answered. In the SG Optimizer, you will see an option to enable full page caching on Cloudflare. If you want to use Cloudflare, I would recommend you to enable that option. Basically, if you don't do that, what you're doing is you're slowing your website when you're taking traffic on the same continent most of the time, because you're putting Cloudflare in front of the web server, or in front of the reverse proxy. So even if your SiteGround caching is working, your visitor will do a request. It will reach Cloudflare Edge, then it will make a request to SiteGround server. SiteGround server will return that, and then the Edge will serve it to the visitor. While with full page caching on Cloudflare, you're moving the SiteGround cache on that edge. So if you really want to use Cloudflare, and I would recommend that only if you're truly serving international visitors, if you're selling worldwide, etc. If you really need to use Cloudflare, at least enable the full page caching for Cloudflare on the SG Optimizer plugin. Otherwise, you're actually slowing down your website. Daniel, we have a question about Sucuri. Why is SG Optimizer not compatible with Sucuri? Actually, it is compatible with Sucuri, and it works.
So what you explained about Cloudflare, it's valid for pretty much any CDN out there.
Any CDN that requires DNS to be pointed there and stands in front of your entire website, because CloudFront of Amazon for static resources will not work that way.
Yeah, so I'm purely speaking about the CDNs that give you the functionality to cache your entire website. So what those CDNs do, they check the same HTTP headers that we mentioned. So if you have the website cached on our end and you want to use another layer that will be closer to your visitors, you can do that with Sucuri, with Cloudflare, with Fastly, for example, pretty much any of the CDNs out there. And it should be working if they're following the same HTTP caching standards.
Okay, I'm marking that one as cached. We have a question from Nico. It seems that the caching is always on and it can be turned off. How can caching be fully disabled on demand when a website is being developed, debugged, or any other valid reasons? I think we disable it by default on the staging tool.
Yeah, so we do have staging tool for WordPress, and when you create a staging website for a WordPress site, it's going to be disabled by default. But I actually answered that question and showed you how you can disable caching for any website or for a folder, in which folder you have a website you're working on. So just setting that header that I showed during the presentation, the one that says no store max age 0, will disable the cache until you remove that line from the htaccess. And when you edit the htaccess, after that, flush the cache so that the new settings could be active.
Yeah, if you have used one of the htaccess we've provided in our knowledge base to disable the cache and it's still cached, most probably you haven't flushed it after you have saved those lines.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, another question. I'm marking another question for Joomla's answered. Can I say that the theme of WordPress is the most important element to determine the speed of your website? Since I use SiteGround and HD Optimizer, Google speed is still slow. That's a question by Foster. When Daniel talked about milliseconds, know that this is time to first byte that we are measuring. This means that after either 70 or a second and a half, your visitors will start downloading your website. The server is ready with the computation, the server side is done, we have this HTML, the browser will download the HTML super fast, and then it will start rendering your website. Now, this doesn't mean that if you have huge image in your header, your website will be fast. No, because that image will take time from your networking to be downloaded.
And that's separate from the HTML. Like the HTML could be 10 kilobytes,
yeah.
The image could be another megabyte, and your web browser is downloading the HTML, checking the HTML, oh, we have an image here, we need to load it. Let's load it up from the server.
Yep.
So
that's why I mitigate those with things like lazy load, etc. But you should use Google page speed, and you should check the largest contentful paint. They call it large content paint, which is basically the largest piece of content that you have on your website that takes most of the rendering time. We're not talking about loading time, we're talking about rendering time. Because even if you're fast, the server is super fast, if your caching is super fast, again, if you put huge media, 5 megabytes PNG, not uncommon, unfortunately, for people to do. They get it from the designer, it's huge, they put it right on the website, and bam, you're getting a slow page. The time to first byte will be super fast, but your page will still take ages to load. So
yeah,
I hope that answers your question. And this is your content and theme area. Now, if you choose a good theme with quality JavaScript, with quality visual elements that are SVGs, that are built-in sprites, etc., it will render fast. We try to do things in the SD Optimizer like combine the CSS, defer the loading of JavaScript, combine the JavaScripts to minify all that content. But again, it is those are improvements. Those are not general overhauls of that. So your team is still important. So when you choose your team, choose quality teams, choose trusted providers. The ones that we have in the starter are very good teams, so I would recommend you taking a look at them. Neve is a great team, Astra is a great team, Ocean WP is a decent team too. So that's my answer. Yes, we do crazy good stuff with caching, but your team and your content still matters.
Yeah, I saw a question about page builders somewhere, and people were asking, like,
yeah, guys, please use the ask the question functionality, because it's much easier for us, but we try to watch the chat too.
Oh yeah, it's actually on top. Like when using page builders like Elementor, Divi, WP Bakery, are there certain settings you should do and not do so it doesn't conflict with the builder? You want to answer this one?
I want to answer that one because I'm seeing several comments under it that saying there are issues with Stride team and another team. Just to be clear, we don't cache your backend. It's some teams and integrated builders in them. I'm not saying Elementor, but others. They try to mimic a front-end experience. And by mimicking a front-end experience, what they do is that they get their content cached. So this is how that's shoot myself in the leg situation a bit, right? Because WordPress, unfortunately, doesn't yet have an internal mechanism for that, and people try to overcome it in different ways. So Elementor is a good builder. They do things right, and we always check that the Edge Optimizer is working fine. If you're using Elementor Pro, and whatever team you want, a quality team without errors in it, Edge Optimizer will cache in, and the front end optimization will work just fine. Usually the problems are with plugins for Elementor, which unfortunately are not on the same quality as the main plugin, and they cause different errors. They throw errors in the API, errors in the headers, and those things can cause problems. So if any of that JavaScript is not working as supposed to, if any of your CSS is not working as supposed to, please use the exclude functionality. We have added separate exclude functionality with every single optimization we have, from unification, from the combination, and from deferring of the JavaScript. So if something is not working after you have enabled a certain functionality, all you need to do is to exclude from it. Do not disable the entire plugin just because you have a piece of JavaScript that should not be combined or deferred. Okay, will the cacher help a site rating when Google change come in May? Yes, Megan, it will help you a lot because it will make your website faster and it will give you better results in Google's rankings.
Yeah.
Daniel, this is your area. You love those tools. What tools are you using to test web speed? We mentioned Google page speed, of course, like being the elephant in the room, and everyone is testing it nowadays. But what else can people use?
Well, I would definitely say that page speed has evolved a lot the last couple of years, and you know that right now it is based on another project which is called Lighthouse.
Yeah.
And Lighthouse is in your browsers as well. Like when you click inspect element into Google Chrome, everything that I showed you, the timing and the profiling, it's based on Lighthouse. So Lighthouse in your browser is pretty much the same thing under the hood. So in Chrome, inspect element, profile pages, that's the best tool that I'm using every day, because you just inspect the page, you see for that specific page everything that you need to see in there, the headers, like the timing and other stuff. If you want to compare with other tools, you can use GTmetrix, which is also a good one. And I think that that's enough. Let's not give like 100 options here because people will get confused. And
actually, GTmetrix, they're actually using page speed too. So they're sort of like a meta. They're like a meta testing tool because they try to combine a number of different tools. But don't go too crazy with it. Page speed is enough.
Yeah.
And don't go crazy chasing a fictional number, chasing scores. I see that a lot of people do that. They say, okay, my website has 96 on Google PageSpeed, why not 100? Okay, we all love to see the best result possible, but for certain websites with certain functionality, there is no way we can get 100, okay? Go after proper user experience, time to first byte under 200 milliseconds, and that's enough. And you're good for it, trust me. SiteGround.com doesn't have 100 score on Google page speed.
Yeah.
And the website is performing really well.
Yeah, in the chat right now, Jonathan says webpagetest.org. That's also a good tool.
Yeah, I agree. That one actually adds a lot of good front end advice.
To add something to what you said, like the milliseconds, the loading time, it's not the only thing. Like Google actually realized that, and there is another metric that they are making more and more popular right now, and it sounds complicated, but it's super simple. So they call it first contentful paint, and What it means is that when you open up a website, you need to wait just a certain amount of time for the website to be usable. Like, you don't need all the elements to be loaded in order for that website to be usable. Like, there could be a missing picture that will load after a couple of seconds, or a sliding menu that you don't need right now because you're there to see the products on that website, and that sliding menu, because it uses JavaScript, it doesn't matter if that menu will start working in 3 seconds after that. So just get the feeling of your website, open it up, see how it loads, if its visuals are there, if the content that you want to present to your users is there when you need it in the beginning. Like, if you see that the content, which is the most important part, is not loading quickly enough, then you should focus on seeing what's blocking that content from appearing, like the blocking JavaScript, for example. So it's not just the numbers. Like, don't strive for 100 score and for 50 milliseconds load times. Like, there are other things to consider. Like, use users, use behavior testing for that.
Yeah, and there are a couple more things I want to add here. The first is that especially when you do front-end optimizations, when you enable things like minification, combination, and deferring of JavaScript, etc., always enable one of those optimizations, check your website. Enable another one, check your website for broken functionality, for speed. Don't go and enable every single optimization that you see available, and then when something something minimal part of the website doesn't work properly, then you have to start bashing your head thinking, hey, what is it? Is it the minification? Is that? Always test your website after each change you make to it. And the second thing I want to mention is that when you measure and when you consider your time to first byte, note that when we're talking about 40, 70, 100 milliseconds, there is networking involved in that. So there is a chance that your internet connection is not that good. So always try to test from a tool like GTmetrix. If you're testing with GTmetrix, make a free account and choose a location that's in your continent. By default, it tests from Canada, which is not the best way to test your European account with us, for example. So bear in mind that networking takes big part of that value. So actually, when you have a cache content, it's mostly networking.
Yeah. So, like the page I showed you, the size of that page is 10 kilobytes. That website is in Amsterdam. It's hosted in the Netherlands. And right now we are in Sofia. So the round trip time from the packet to get there to download the kilobytes, that's like 95% of 80 milliseconds loading time. So most of that is networking. So if you are, for example, in Australia and you're testing a website in the States, like, keep in mind that most of that will be mainly for the packets to get there and to go back to your browser.
Okay, we have time for one last question. It's by John Cleary. Is time to first byte affected by name servers? My name servers is not on SiteGround. My SiteGround time to first byte is 3,900 milliseconds, with many others reporting SG sites at 200 milliseconds. It doesn't sound right.
Yeah, it doesn't, but I'm kind of surprised by the question, because when you say name servers, what I understand is DNS, like domain name system name servers, and that should not be affecting the time to first byte at all, because what is happening in the browser is that first you resolve the domain name, you find where that website is hosted, and then you go to that server and ask for the website to be delivered to your browser. Actually, if you look at the timing in Google Chrome, there is a separate window for DNS resolving. So that high time to first byte that you are seeing is definitely not affected by DNS. It could be something else. And my advice is to look at the headers, see if that page is cached at all. If you're seeing a miss, then it's not cached. If you're seeing a hit and it's a huge time to first byte, then my guess would be that it's a huge page, like megabytes of data to be delivered.
I doubt it. If it's 4,000, that's like
4 seconds. 4 seconds. It's not cache.
I haven't
sure.
seen a 4-second response from the cache, and I doubt I will ever see one. So John, your caching is 99.99% not working. So there's a test button in the Edge Optimizer plugin. You can test the headers manually, which is a very, very good option. Someone said in the comments that you should always test in incognito mode because different...
He says it's 4 megabytes, which is huge page.
Well, 4 megabytes will...
But again, it should not be 4 seconds. It
will not be 4 seconds.
Yeah.
No matter how big the page is, it will not... Well...
No, it depends. Like
we could do it.
We could benchmark that and see what
as
happens.
An experiment.
Why not?
But I doubt it. It's surely not. It's surely not cached. Okay. We've been a bit about 1 hour. Thank you all for participating into this webinar. It was a pleasure for both of us to be here with you today and answer your questions. We're going to do more and more of those webinars, so make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and don't miss the content we prepared for you. I hope that you have enjoyed the webinar. Unfortunately, we weren't able to answer all of your questions, but follow our tutorials, our webinars, and you will get all the info you need. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Daniel. And
thank you, Christo. Thank you, guys. Take care. Be safe.
Bye-bye. Stay safe.